This particular sculpture has been commissioned by a couple who've bought a section of land to gift to the Woodland Trust to be rewilded. It's down in Dorset, and as part of that sort of rewilding, they're actually going to have an area that's a sculpture park and hopefully gain more sculptures over time. But this being the first one, they really wanted to not only immortalise her father, who this is a portrait of, but really depict the relationship between grandparents and their grandchildren. The beginning of the process of carving a piece of this scale is really down to the planning of the proportions and things like that. So having specified 1.5 times life size, there might be a little bit of discrepancy with that, but the principal thing is getting the proportions right. Everybody's different, so when it comes to doing a portrait of somebody and actually getting it lifelike, getting it realistic, that's when it gets very, very difficult. Working out the proportions on a piece like this always starts with the head height. So in essence, it's quite simple in as much as you take the average adult head height and times that by 1.5, but on this kind of scale you really need to focus on the pose and how the gravity sits as well. So he's sitting on a tree stump with the 2 grandchildren on his knee, so if his back is too straight it's going to look unnatural. If his back is too hunched it'll look too old, and there's a really fine balance with how the gravity works with a pose like this. So I really want to give it a natural feel, and I really want to give it a sense of being relaxed, and that connection between the grandfather and the grandchild. The first cuts with a sculpture like this are the most important. Those cuts can determine the difference between a direction that you take with creating it, because it's a natural product. You may find the grain isn't quite how you want it. You may find a rot pocket somewhere. It's very, very difficult to say what's inside the wood. So when I cut in, I'm assessing from the outside of the log whether there's potentially any rot in there. I'm assessing the direction of the grain, where the grain is going to be cleanest for something like the face, because that's what I want to do is make the area where I carve the face the cleanest, and also hopefully create it in such a way that it won't split too much across the main features. So you can never stop wood from moving, but depending on where you position the figure within the log, you can minimize splitting as it goes through that drying process. After a period of sculptor's block, let's call it, I've kind of got my head back into this piece, working my way in. I've found where the figure is, found where the 2 children are. Because of the piece of wood, I've had to adjust the pose slightly, and I've now got one of the children standing between his legs rather than sat on his knee. I think by the time it's done, the piece will look nice. It's just so difficult at this stage to kind of work your way in without overcutting and without taking too much away. The piece of wood, the oak that I'm using, does have numerous small faults in it and things like that, but other than that, it's a really nice piece to work on. It's carving well, and the shape is coming together really nicely. Getting to the final stage of any sculpture is difficult, because it's always difficult to know when to stop. And with this particular piece, it felt right to have a kind of edgy and roughened feel to it. And the last bit of this sculpture, I've used the flap sander over it once I've stained it, and that's to get this kind of, it's almost like a bronze patina. He's a grandfather who's worked his whole life. You can tell he was an outdoors kind of person. He had this kind of, just from the photographs I saw, you know, and studied to get the likeness, that was the feel of what I got. So this roughened texture, this old, already looking weathered, I think was what I was aiming for, and this will weather quite nicely and hopefully complement the sculpture. The next step from here is to load it onto the trailer, which is quite hairy in itself. It's a very heavy piece of wood. I'm estimating it still weighs up to 1.5 tons. So I'm using an appropriate trailer, and we've not only got this piece, we've actually got a bench to take as well, which is part of the theme, part of the setup. So we're going to be loading this up this afternoon, and it's going to be quite, I don't know, a momentous occasion, I think, really is probably the best way to describe it, because this piece has been in my workshop for well over a year now in various stages, and it's one I've kept coming back to, and it's one I've kept revisiting and seeing with fresh eyes, and that's been probably the best way to describe the process more than anything. It's not been I'm going to get this done in this certain amount of time and it's done. It's been one that I've revisited on a number of occasions, but it's been a really pleasant project. We are taking this sculpture down to Dorset. It's a long journey, and I think it'll turn a few heads on the motorway.
This site is very special to me. I helped Dorset Wildlife Trust acquire the site, and the purpose of the site is to restore nature so that it's open for everyone. Everyone can enjoy the site. But I wanted something here that was really personal to me and that would commemorate my dad. Although it would be very personal to me, I wanted it to be something that other people could relate to. So for anyone that doesn't know my dad, I want that to just represent the incredibly strong bond between a grandfather and their grandchildren. This is my dad, John, was a builder. He worked very, very hard all of his life, and when we were young, although he was a fantastic dad, we probably didn't see him that much because he was out working, out enjoying himself. He played squash, played snooker, didn't he? We went sailing, so he was a busy man, and we had wonderful holidays with him, but he was always busy. And then when our children came along, my dad had more time for them. He was forced to give up work because he was very, very ill, and incredibly sad as though that was for all of us. It was great for our grandchildren because they got to see him lots. So he started out obviously as a labourer, bricklayer, and then a builder. So he then had his own business. He used to build houses. So all of us grew up going on building sites with him, and even when he was retired, we all remember him because he would still mostly wear this because he was always, you know, still working around the house, wasn't he, even when he was
Still
retired.
had his mind, didn't he?
Always building
completely.
something. So he always had his working boots on, his working shirt.
And always wore braces.
Always wore braces. And pretty much always a baseball cap. And and that's how we remember him. And you know, like I remember lots of things that I associate with, including the smell of him coming home from work. So he would smell like a building site. So I think that Simon's done an amazing job. I gave him a very detailed and hard specification. I think he was probably cursing me with the baseball cap. And you know, the whole proportions of Dad.
Right. It wouldn't have been right without that.
No. And the proportions had to be right because he was a big man, very, very big and very, very straight in his back, wasn't he?
6'3".
Yeah.
People used to say, "How did you come through that door? Did you have to duck?" But now it's the norm, isn't it?
Yeah.
6'3" is nothing.
Yeah.
It was then.
There's been, you know, so difficult to obviously encapsulate a real person, and there's so many aspects of Dad that just stick out in our mind, like very high cheekbones, which is a very Welsh feature, and the moustache. But he's got it, isn't he? It's brilliant. There's just so many things, and Simon worked from some photos that I gave him, including one of Dad holding Kai, my youngest son, when he was 1 day old. So he had Kai under one arm and then Morgan sat on the other. And yeah, the look on both Morgan and Dad's faces, they were just glowing, you know, holding on to Kai like that. I hope that my dad will be very proud of what I've done here with Dorset Wildlife Trust. Dad absolutely loved nature, he loved birds, and that was increasingly special to him as he got older, and you know, couldn't work so much, and it was just, I think he would have thought this was amazing.
Out, you know, sleep outs.
Yeah, I think he would have thought this was amazing, wouldn't he? And what a lovely place for him to be here.
Oh God, yeah, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.